What we lost when the lies were gone. He was 40 when they brought in the system. It came quietly, first the courts, then the contracts, then politicians after a scandal nobody could quite remember anymore, then everyone. By the time he was 45, almost everyone wore it. A small thing behind the ear, a lens in one eye. It listened to what you said and to what was said back. When something untrue passed through the air, it gave a soft tone in both ears. The speakers and the listeners almost imaginary, like a fingernail tapped against glass. People got used to the tone the way they had gotten used to traffic. After a while, they stopped hearing it, they only heard its absence. He remembered the early years, the arguments at dinner, salesmen losing their job, then advertisers, then most of the people who wrote political speeches. There was a strange period when everyone seemed lighter, almost giddy, as if a long deceit had been lifted off the world. He remembered laughing about it with his wife at the kitchen table. Imagine, she said, a world where nobody can lie to us. She meant it as a wonder, he took it as one. Then his mother got sick, 72. The doctors gave her 4 months. He sat on the edge of her bed in the house she had lived in for 50 years. And she looked up and asked him, with the directness only the dying have, "Am I going to be alright?" He opened his mouth. He felt the words, "Yes, of course you will," from in his throat the way they had formed in the throats of sons for thousands of years. He heard the system waiting. He said, "The doctors say 4 months." She closed her eyes. She did not cry. She turned her face toward the wall, and after a long time she said, "I see." And he sat there for another hour, holding a hand that no longer held his back. He understood that something had happened in that room which could not be undone. She died in 7 weeks. He never lied to her again. He could not remember how. After the funeral, he started noticing. The priest at the wake had not said his mother was a good woman. He said she was loved by her family, which was true, and that he fulfilled her obligations, which was also true, and then he had stopped. There was nothing else to say. None of the mourners had told him that she was in a better place. They told him they were sorry. They told him they would miss her. They told him true things, and the true things did not console him. Hannah Arendt had once written that the ability to lie and the ability to act came from the same source. The human capacity to imagine the world other than it is. He had read it at the university and forgotten it. He remembered it now, standing among people who could no longer say his mother had gone anywhere at all. His daughter, 8 years old then, stopped asking for stories. He asked her why. She thought a long time, the way children do when they want to be exact. "Dad," she said, "I don't like it when the noise comes during the dragon scene." He tried once more, a week later. A book about the rabbit flying to the moon. The tone came at the second sentence. His daughter looked at him with the polite embarrassment of a child watching an adult break a rule. He closed the book. Walking through the city, he noticed the streets were quieter. Not in volume. The compliments between strangers had gone. The exaggerations of friends recounting the weekends. People still spoke. They spoke carefully, in the narrow channel of what could be verified. And when there was nothing verifiable to say, they said nothing at all. Nobody fell in love anymore. People paired up. They moved in together when the arithmetics of their life made sense. They had children when they were ready. But the old word, the one his grandparents used, the one that had meant a kind of beautiful insanity, had quietly fallen out of the language. You could not say you are the most beautiful person in the world without the tone. You could say, "I find you attractive," which was a fact about yourself. He watched young people in the trains saying such things, and they looked like accountants closing a transaction. The churches emptied. He had not been religious, but he had grown up in a country where people went on Sundays, and after the system, they stopped. Not because anyone told them, the words wouldn't come. He could not stand in the building and say, "I believe," without a tone, unless you were among the very few for whom belief was a verified internal state. And most people, it turned out, had never been those few. The priest struggled. Then they had begun speaking only in quotations or questions. Did he rise? A young priest asked once in a sermon that became briefly famous. "I do not know. The tone has taken even that from me." The church closed within a year. Nietzsche had written, more than a century before, that God was dead. He had not meant God had been disproven. He meant that the structure holding the word God upright in the human mouths had collapsed, that the conditions under which a person could say it and mean it had quietly left the world. The man understood this now in a way he had never understood it before. It had not been about God at all. It had been about every word that ever had more than it could prove. Love, that the same way. Beauty, hope, not disproven, just no longer sayable. He thought about it for a long time. He thought about every funeral he had been to as a child, and how everyone had been full of lies, and how every lie had been a kind of love. He went peacefully. She didn't suffer. He's with God now. Lies. All of them. and every one of them a hand reaching across the grave toward the living, saying, "I know there's nothing I can say, so let me say this instead." He thought about his father telling him when he was small and afraid of the dark that monsters could not enter rooms where children were loved. He had believed it for years. It had not been true, but it had been true enough. The thing his father gave him was not information. It was the shape of a world in which he could sleep. He thought about the books his grandfather had read aloud on winter nights. Almost none of them could be read aloud now. The dragons hummed, the kingdoms hummed, the talking foxes and the magical apples. All of them hummed. He understood, finally, what his daughter had meant. The noise during the dragon scene. The world had not lost its dragons because they had been disproven. They had been lost because they could no longer be spoken. We thought we were taking away the lie, he thought. The salesman's promise, the husband's affair, the politician's pledge. We thought we were lifting a weight of the world. But underneath that weight, there had been something else, something we had never named because we never had to. The whole quiet architecture of being human together, the small mercies, the small enchantments, the small bridges built of sentences that were not literally true, but were true in the only way that mattered. We had not taken away the lie, we had taken away the gift the lie had carried. He carried this for years. He was 53 when his daughter came home. She was 21 now, pregnant. The father, a kind young man he had met twice and liked. They were not getting married. Nobody really did anymore. The vows were too thick with the kind of language that hummed. But they were happy. In the careful, factual way happy had come to mean. She sat across from him at the kitchen table and told him. She was nervous. She had her mother's hands, her mother's habit of pressing her thumbnail against her index finger when she was waiting for someone to speak. He looked at her. He saw the 8-year-old who not wanted to hear about the dragon. He saw the women she had grown into, raised in a new world, who did not know what has been lost because you cannot miss what you have never had. He saw the small life inside her, which would be born into a city of quiet sentences and would never be told by anyone that monsters could not enter the rooms of loved children. And he said to her, hearing the tone before the sentence was even finished, "You are going to be a wonderful mother. The baby is going to be loved beyond anything you can imagine, and everything is going to be alright." The system hummed 3 times, once for each lie. His daughter looked at him. She did not look away. Her eyes filled very slowly with something he had not seen in another human face for almost 20 years. Not gratitude, not surprise, a kind of remembering, as if some old part in her, some part that had never been alive in her own life, but had been passed down somehow, was hearing for the first time what it had been waiting for. She did not say thank you. She could not have without the tone. She reached across the table and put her hand on his. They sat there in a kitchen in a city that could no longer lie, while the small device behind his ear hummed quietly into the empty afternoon. He did not know if he would do it again. He only knew that for the first time in many years, he said something true.